All right, welcome back to Gun Culture Radio. I have two things I want to get across to you guys. So I decided to record an intro before we get into this episode with Duncan Trussell. One announcement and one thing I want to warn you about. So the announcement is we now have a sponsor at Gun Culture Radio, which is really exciting. It's SDI, Sonoran Desert Institute. You can check out their website at sdi.edu. They're an accredited gunsmithing college, basically. And you can do it online. You can take online courses through them, which is just awesome. Because if anyone's been thinking about becoming a gunsmith, that's a great way to do it. They accept GI Bill, so you veterans out there that want to have a job that's interesting to you. If you're interested in guns, that's a great way to do it. I think that everyone should be working towards some type of career that they really enjoy, because work should not be just about slaving away at some factory and those jobs are great if you need them. Those factory jobs, the kind of jobs that nobody wants, those can be jobs that really keep you alive and keep food coming to your table while you're working towards something else that you would rather do, right? And this, something like this, is a great example of an option for that, because if you like guns, like in another life, honestly, if I wasn't doing this, I would have probably wanted to become a gunsmith or do something in firearms. Just because whenever you're doing something that you love, it makes work so much better. I mean, it just makes it so much better. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like this is just something that you do sometimes, and you get a check every now and then. It's great, and this is a great school, SDI. Check them out. We really appreciate their sponsorship. So the thing I want to warn you about is, so if some of you guys, if you're familiar with Duncan Trussell already as you're watching this, then you probably have nothing to worry about, because if you like Duncan Trussell, then you're gonna really enjoy this episode. Now, for a lot of you that don't know who Duncan Trussell is, I just want to give you guys a heads up. Now, sometimes I may have people on the show that might have some out there ideas about things from time to time, right? And I'm not necessarily saying out there ideas is very relative. That's the thing. I don't like to get too controversial on this show, because I want this show to be a place where all people who are interested in guns can come together on lots of different issues. That's important to me, because I don't think that someone who thinks dramatically different from me is somehow wrong or not as good as me. I love to hear different opinions, which is why I want to try to bring a wide range of types of people from different perspectives on the show. But Duncan Trussell is someone who has opinions and perspectives that you're going to find possibly pretty far on maybe an opposite end of the spectrum than you might think, right? But I think that his ideas are well thought out, very articulated, and I think it's worth listening. And another thing to remember is this guy is someone who in a lot of ways might be considered on the other side of things as how most gun people think, but he likes guns. I think it's really important for us to support people who we view being on the other side, being, whatever you want to call it, liberals or hippies or whatever, which I don't really see the connection, honestly, between being a liberal and conservative that likes guns. I mean, guns to me should cross all of those boundaries, which is one reason I like to bring people like Duncan Trussell, on the show, because it broadens everyone's perspective, and I like the fact that we can break some of these stereotypes that all liberals or all hippies or all whatever hate guns, right? So he really kind of breaks this stereotype. But he's a free thinker, great dude, awesome guy. If he says something that offends you, please don't take it too seriously. He is a comedian after all, but I really appreciate him coming on the show, and I hope that you put it into perspective and don't take life too seriously. I guess it's all fun, just ideas. We're just having a big time, and I really appreciate him coming on the show. He's a great dude. Check out his website, duncantrussell.com. If support him, if you like what he has to say, and or even if you just appreciate the fact that he says those kinds of things and still likes guns. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and We'll get right to it. All right, welcome back to Gun Culture Radio, and this week I've got Duncan Trussell on, and some of you guys may already know him. I've already heard from some of his fans out there that watch the videos. Seen me wear his T-shirts and stuff in some of the videos, but man, he's a great dude. I've watched him for a long time on the Joe Rogan Experience, and he's got a great podcast, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, man, I love that show too.
Thank you.
I love going back, and some of my favorite like of your stuff is like going back and listening to the old Rogan Experiences, like some of those first like 100 or so. That's some good stuff.
Yeah, that was really cool, man. When it was those are interesting times when you're just like starting doing the podcast, and it was really cool. It's really cool the way all of this stuff, what you're doing, it's all in the same family of this new media that is utilizing technology that a few years ago was completely inaccessible to folks like us. Like if you wanted to be a broadcaster, you had to
a lot of money and
so much money. Yeah, you have to be a millionaire to afford.
Yeah.
Because this stuff didn't really exist. It's such a brand new thing. You used to have to have access to a radio tower. You used to have to, and to have access to that, you had to have so much money. So it's a really beautiful thing that's happening, that folks like us actually get to have a voice. And the reason we get to have a voice is because this stuff is so affordable now compared to what it would have cost 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The equipment that we're using right now, had it existed and pieces of it didn't even exist, it would have been NASA would have had it. It would have been shit the government would have had, maybe the military would have had it. Probably even like millionaires couldn't get to it. Well, and that's overdoing it a little bit, but it would have been a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing, is just there's no more gatekeepers anymore. That's what's awesome, really awesome about it. Even just the expense was one gatekeeper, and then if you had the money, you might not have gotten onto a network or anything like that, because maybe they didn't like what you're saying. They didn't want to put you on there. But now it's like,
that's right.
Anybody can say whatever they want. And of course, because of that, people will say, oh, if you heard it from the internet, it can't be true. But the thing is about the internet, there's nonsense on there too. Just, everybody knows there's nonsense on TV. But the thing is, if somebody knows some truth, then like there's nothing that's going to stop it from being on the internet. That's a cool thing.
That's right. And also, I think that idea that if you heard it on the internet, it can't be true is a real lazy idea, because it means that you're not investigating. Whenever you get any bit of information, it's so important. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking about all the nonsense that I regurgitate sometimes because I haven't investigated it. And,
well, I mean, we all do that.
But in general, like, and I'm getting better at it. If I hear some fact, whatever the thing is, I'll try to research that fact just a little bit. Just go a little deeper than whatever your normal information sources are, and eventually you'll get to the core truth of the thing.
Right.
And it's so important to do that. It's so important to do that, no matter where your information's coming from. There's an awful school of psychology. When I went to college, I got a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I'm not bragging about that, but that's what I studied. And they talked about the corporate psychology, is what they called it. Or at the liberal arts school I went to, they called it black psychology, which was like, evil, dark psychology. So like, but it's the study of how do we implant information into human beings that makes them want to buy our stuff. So one of the things that they learned is that humans will remember facts, but they won't remember where the facts came from. So our minds like to gather up little bits of information. So when you see a billboard, sometimes it'll have some fact on it as you're driving by. Behind it, a Budweiser can or whatever the thing is, and you will remember that fact that is somehow benefits whatever that corporation is, but you'll forget that fact was seeded into your brain by a massive corporation. And then you'll be at a party or talking to your friends, and you'll start regurgitating this tidbit of information, not even knowing that you're doing the work of a corporation, not even realizing that you're a kind of pollinator spreading ideas that were formulated not in some think tank where people were trying to understand big ideas, but in a boardroom in some corporation that wants to sell Wellbutrin to people, or that wants to sell, cars.
Yeah.
It's a curious thing, which is why it's so important when you do get those tidbits, go a little deeper, find out the truth behind that truth, and then you can start vomiting the stuff out into the world. God, I'm such a hypocrite. I don't do that at all.
Yeah, I mean,
I shudder to think of how much nonsense I've sprayed into the internet, so forgive me.
Well, everybody is guilty of that, because when you hear some new idea, especially if you're someone who you like to think about a lot of things, like definitely both of us do, you hear some idea and like hollow earth theory is a good example. It's like, that's like an awesome idea to think about. Like, wow. The idea that there's like a whole other like universe almost on the inside of the earth. That's awesome. And you're almost like scared to find out that it's not true, because it's so cool to think about that you want to just run and tell a bunch of people before you start actually looking into it, and seeing all the sides of it. And I'm not saying anything about hollow earth. I don't know if it's true or not, but like, there's so many exciting things out there that you can discover, and it is so easy to just take it and run with it. And like you said, start spreading it, pollinating it, through all your friends, and then it grows. And especially nowadays with social media, it's so easy for ideas to grow and flourish like a virus, which can be a good or a bad thing, And
it's really important to understand that we exist in a time in human history where there has never been more access to information, and there has never been such a, as far as I'm aware, unless you subscribe to theories that we, depending on where you think humans started. Some people think there have been multiple catastrophic events that have happened that have sort of rebooted history again and again and again. However, whatever you want to think, but let's just imagine in this reboot of history that we're currently in, we have evolved so much strategy when it comes to things like the military, espionage, control over societies, control over information. This stuff has gotten so refined that, because power structures are always interested in controlling groups of people. Controlling groups of people is a very profitable thing. You make a lot of money from controlling groups of people. There's no question about it. If you don't believe me, go to Disneyland. I'm not talking about some Illuminati. So I'm saying you want to understand how important it is how profitable it is to control groups of people. Go to Vegas. Go to any Vegas casino where you will find yourself being herded like some kind of bipedal cow through this glowing fun house that just is like, before you know it, you're going to be sitting in front of the Fantasy Island slot machine.
Can't find an exit anywhere, trying to leave. Can't
find an exit. They're pumping scented air in. They're getting you drunk, and they're just sucking money out of you. This is anything happening in a casino is all intentional. Yeah. Nothing accidental is happening there. None of the billionaires who are building these casinos are going to leave any room for error. They are going to try to cover every single possibility to maximize their profit margin. And that's just a casino. How much more so for governments who benefit not just financially from controlling people, but benefit from whatever the benefit comes from being someone controlling the world, which I think is must be a very intoxicating thing for these people. It's not just, I know some senators and congressmen and people in government. I'm not demonizing all of them. Many of them have a true desire to heal the world. I really believe that. I'm not saying that in a sarcastic way. I really believe that, man. But some of them, I don't know that that's their number one motivation. I think they just figured out wow, this is a cool way to make money.
Exactly.
So all that being said, if casinos have studied crowd control and
Yeah.
paradigm manipulation, and refined it in such a specific way, how much more refined is that sort of stuff happening in all governments of the world?
And we do it to
Which,
ourselves too, is the thing. I mean, a lot of that stuff, that you're talking about, I think a lot of it comes from the fact that the people who are setting up these things, like even in the Vegas casinos, know a lot more about human nature than the average person does. That's the thing. It's like you can almost learn about yourself just by walking around in a casino. I mean, you can learn about human nature just by walking around there and seeing how they have all that set up. All the shining lights and the way that you're forced to walk through certain areas and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just it's crazy. And the news is the same way. The news has
That's
so
right.
much like just subtle, like ever so slightly subtle things that really just tug on your heartstrings ever so slightly in like the most perfect ways. I mean, it's almost if I wasn't so mad about it, I'd be pretty impressed, really. I mean,
yeah, I'm impressed by it. I think it's amazing. It's like I think that it's fun to it's getting angry. I was actually just reading this. I'd be curious to know what you think about this because
Yeah.
I'm kind of like up in the air about it myself. But I was just reading this. There's a philosopher named Seneca, and he has this wonderful essay on whether or not anger is a useful thing. Like whether, because a lot of people think that anger is, we need to get angry. Like if you want to get things done, you
Yeah.
need to get angry. And Seneca's take on the thing is that actually no. If you really want to be a great warrior in whatever way that you want to be a warrior, that anger, if it overtakes you and becomes your fuel, is going to lessen your probability of winning whatever battle you happen to be involved in. And that it's more of this logical kind of Vulcan Spock style approach to conflict, or to recognizing like, okay, here's what's going on. I'm existing in a highly advanced civilization where laws are being created by groups of people who, as they're creating these laws, do not have the will of the people in mind.
Right.
Or if it is there, it's a secondary consideration, but the primary consideration is pleasing the lobbyists who have placed them in office. And so when you realize that
It's like a bunch of back scratching, basically. Yeah.
sure, it's just like, let's imagine that I was running for office and you donated to me running for office $50 million in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
And you represent, let's say, I don't know, you represent the you represent the Prison Guards Association, right?
Right.
And so I get into office and you've given me $50 million. The $50 million came from your for-profit prisons. And I get into office and all of a sudden you find out that I'm talking about creating legislation that will declassify marijuana as a Schedule I substance, because the research coming out seems to indicate that it really isn't that harmful a substance, at least compared to some of the other substances that it's classified as. And it's certainly not such a harmful substance that it justifies putting someone in prison, sucking taxpayers' money to feed them shitty food, or that it justifies police forces taking away their land and their homes and destroying their families. And so I've recognized that logically. And so, but that if marijuana suddenly becomes declassified, legal or decriminalized or whatever, you understand that prison populations are going to diminish, and you're going to be able to predict the level that prison populations will diminish with almost 100% accuracy, because you know what percentage of people in your prisons are there for possession or for harvesting marijuana. And you can calculate every person in this prison makes me X amount of money per year, which means you just cost me $5 billion, or whatever it is.
And what kind of, man, it would take some serious hardcore moral code to go, you know what? I don't really like this job where I'm making so much money. I'm going to screw over all the work that I've done and say, you know what? This is wrong. Yeah, I don't, that's the thing. You don't see, that's not going to happen. Someone who is going to, they know that they're going to lose, millions of dollars or billions, maybe even, they're going to put their morals aside for that in most cases.
Well, it's, what you're saying there is a really important point, because what we like to do, and especially hippies like me who sound like raspy psycho lesbians.
Hey, people think I'm a hippie too, just because I have long hair. Apparently, like anyone with long hair it has to be a hippie, because that's what hippies look like. All right.
Well, hippies like me, and I am a hippie, and I'm not ashamed of it. I am a hippie, and I'm completely fine with that. But hippies like me like to get real shrill when it comes to people that we consider to be on the other side of the battle line. So people like me, at least when I was younger, when I would think of a prison, someone running a prison, I would want to completely do this black and white thing where it's just like, some kind of like guy wearing a top hat and a handlebar mustache with, cheesy cartoon bags of $100 bills stashed in a safe, completely like immoral, unethical, does not mind, transforming years of a human's existence into money for possession of a substance that grows from the earth and apparently has a lot of not apparently, but definitely has a lot of medicinal qualities. You want to paint the picture of that person, but really what it is far more confusing, which is that you have these people who have been functioning according to a paradigm that got into their heads, not from their own assessment of reality, but got into their heads because in the same way that the corporations plant these seeds of information in people's minds, many humans existing right now, they were born into an era of really intense prohibition, and a lot of the conditioning they got in school and from TV and from everywhere was this: marijuana is evil. Marijuana is a gateway drug. You do marijuana, you're going to start doing heroin. You do marijuana, you're going to start smoking crack. It's become equated with all of that. They don't teach you in school that the cultivation of cannabis was something that was a big part of American history. They will not teach you that. Or if they do teach you that, they'll tell you that the cultivation of cannabis wasn't flowering, that you couldn't get high from it.
Right.
But that of course is not true at all. So I think a lot of people in positions of power right now, especially in the justice system, they're not evil. They're just their operating system that they're running needs an update based on current scientific research. So it's really hard for a person running a prison to accept the fact that for however many years he's been working there, a certain percentage of people in his prisons that he's running are there for no reason at all. So it's easier for a person to defy or to deny scientific research and scientific studies and all the results coming out. It's easier for them to deny that because the guilt that has to come when you realize, oh no, I made a mistake. Yeah. We made a mistake.
We hate to admit that we're wrong, in situations like that.
And it hurts, man. And it's like
when
you don't
money's on the line, and especially, and we're like, that's the thing is we're force fed this ideology, which, like you're saying, that's what makes it hard for them to, and people in that position to take the moral high ground on an issue like that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. When you put your head on that pillow at night, you want to feel like a hero. Yeah. You want your kids to think you're a hero. A lot of these people have families and kids, and a lot of these people. Here's where it gets really, this is where you can't be somebody who's into the whole black and white thing. A lot of these people, man, they want the world to be a better place. Yeah. They want the world to be better.
Everyone has a different idea about what that is,
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah. So I like to believe, and maybe it's just naive, but I like to believe that many, many people who are in positions of authority, who are enforcing outdated laws right now, they're doing that because they want the world to be a better place. And I like to believe that a lot of these people, if they just take the time, and I think you should take the time if you're in a position where you're being told to lock people up for substances that are being shown to be mostly completely harmless. You need to do the research. And that means more than just looking up like headlines. It means read the papers, man. Go deep into this stuff. Look into the research and make a scientific, logical decision over whether or not substances that are currently prohibited, like marijuana, certain psychedelics like psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, do the studies yourself and determine whether or not these substances are harming or helping society, or whether or not these substances, if they were prescription-based, could have some benefit to human beings. And if you find out that the laws that you're enforcing are outdated, then you have a moral responsibility to, it doesn't mean suddenly you quit your job. It doesn't mean you stop enforcing it. No, you just have a moral responsibility to do everything you can in your power to get those laws to change.
Yeah,
because look, man, Richard Pryor's got one of my favorite jokes. And the essence of the joke is, we need prisons.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's some people in there who need to be in there, man.
That's for damn sure.
We need them in there. But we don't need farmers in there. We don't need farmers in prison right now. There's no point. We need people who rip the eyeballs out of elderly people as they're yanking their purses off of their shoulders. We need rapists. We need, there's so many lunatics out there who need to have a nice, thick concrete barrier between them and society. But we don't need farmers and chemists there.
And criminalizing stuff that's based on ideology. That's the thing. Do what you want. We're not necessarily saying, Duncan may have different opinions on than I do, but like I definitely am not saying like go out and do a bunch of drugs. It's not what we're saying. We don't even care. Like we're not even interested in whether drugs are good or not. That's not even part of the discussion. It's just is it really worth it? Is it really isn't the ultimate goal to make the world a better place, to make people happier? People aren't happy when they're in prison. That's for sure.
And also, man, I think this goes into the first of all, number one, and just to really back up what you're saying there.
Yeah.
No way is anybody saying go out and do drugs. What we're saying is, first of all, determine the box drugs that everything gets dumped into. That's got to change.
Yeah, because sugar when people is a
hear drugs, they don't think caffeine, antidepressants, Xanax, whatever painkiller you happen to be on, alcohol. Those are all drugs too, man. And the drugs that are killing everybody are the ones that are currently being prescribed by doctors anyway.
Yeah, sugar probably kills as many people as anything. Really, think about it.
Caffeine, man. That caffeine powder. Those kids order caffeine powder from Amazon. They're at a party. They want to show off. They do a spoonful of pure caffeine powder. 3 minutes later, they're flying into the white light. You can't drop everything into the category of drugs. It's a deeper issue than people getting blasted on whatever thing it is. It's the issue is human autonomy and the idea that human beings are not victims of objects. And I think that this issue goes into the gun control issue too, which is that here we've demonized by saying to get rid of all guns. Get rid of all drugs. Here's what you're saying. What you're saying is because there is a percentage of humans on this planet, and I think it is a very small percentage, there's a percentage of humans on this planet who do not have normal levels of self-control, who do not have what I would consider to be and they weren't raised by a Southern dad. They didn't learn about how to handle a gun or what a gun is. Or,
and that's what it comes down to. A lot of times when it comes to drugs, guns, whatever it is, any kind of rights, sexual rights, whatever it is, it's exposure. We're afraid of things naturally that we don't have exposure to, and like we talked about earlier about not doing research. And another thing too that. This is something I kind of realized, as I was getting older. I remember anyone who is really knowledgeable about at least one thing knows that whatever that thing is, you're aware that there's so much nonsense out there being said about that thing. like when it comes to guns, I know a fair amount about guns, so I watch movies and I see just like horrible, like just totally wrong stuff said about guns. You hear people in gun shops say things that are just totally wrong, and I hear people like behind the counter selling guns to other people and just saying things that are totally wrong. So based on that experience, I know that if I go and look at a car and I'm asking the guy, about something about the 4-wheel drive, well, there's a really good chance he's probably telling me something just totally wrong, even though I don't know anything about cars. So that's the thing, like to realize if you don't know about it, you don't know what you're being told that's so wrong, because most information is wrong about every topic, and you've really got to dig and dig and dig to even begin to get an idea of what might be some truth on the subject, and even then it's going to be hazy. But that's part of a problem that both sides, hard left, hard right, make, is since we're so separated on a lot of issues, we just say, oh, I hate that thing because I don't understand it, and we don't actually like take the time to look. Oh, well, let's see. Let's actually look at this realistically, and keep in mind that everybody ultimately wants something kind of similar. We want to freedom. We want to have a good life, and not have to feel like we need to be afraid of things all the time, and and have a little bit of of money if we work hard for it. It's pretty simple when you get down to it. And guns, the war on guns, or whatever you want to call it, it's just like the war on drugs. There's a bunch of nonsense that people say that gets totally blown out of proportion because not enough people have exposure to it. And that it's very, very similar. It's very frustrating.
It's identical.
I
think it's an identical concept. It's an identical idea, and we're going to treat the symptom. We're not going to treat the cause. Like, we have to go deeper. Like
mental health, for example.
What's that?
Let's say like mental health, for example. Is an issue that a lot of issues with drugs or guns gets blamed on the item itself instead of the mental health. Some people have addictions because they have mental health issues that aren't being treated properly. Some people do crazy things with guns because what's that? There was some quote that Joe Rogan has. It's all over the internet. Something about I forget what it is, but it has something to do with like we're treating a mental health problem like a gun problem and such. And it's so true.
I mean, that is. I mean, it's like you hear about, first of all, people who are terrified of guns. Man, you need to like look up a video there's this video on the internet you need to look up right now.
Yeah.
Which is is some Japanese politician getting assassinated with a samurai sword. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. This guy is just standing there.
Jesus.
And this guy got a samurai sword in whatever meeting he's at or the speech he's giving.
Yeah.
And just comes running at him full force with a samurai sword extended and just slams into him, impaling him on this samurai sword. Of course, killing him. This massive swords, these are razor blades. These are gigantic razor blades. And I think that, if right now, and I could be, and I know this is a very controversial thing to say, because I know it kind of mimics or it's a cliche thing to say, but I believe that if I pressed a button, if I had some kind of magical button and I pressed it and every gun on Earth vanished, every gun on Earth just evaporated suddenly. If you think that wild levels of random violence will suddenly stop, like the same like lunatic who thinks he's got a like multi-eyeballed parrot on his shoulder telling him to go and kill Giffords. If you think that parrot isn't going to be like, well, the guns are gone, but we've got swords.
Yeah.
We still got swords, baby. If you think he's like the parrot's not going to tell him to use swords, come on. It's not, the issue is not the implement of violence being chosen by lunatics. The issue is that we have lunatics in a society where populations are increasing,
Yeah,
and
causes more
some of
problems.
these lunatics have warning signs.
Yeah, but then we ignore. Of course, after the fact, it's easy to say, "Oh, we should have known." But still, like, yeah, there are ways to tell, and also some of it is just how kids are raised these days, where kids are raised in such a weird, unnatural environment. I mean, the fact that you have to kids get diagnosed with having ADD just because they can't sit in the desk all day and they get like 30 minutes of recess. That's just insane.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's insane.
Oh yeah, what, you can't focus? Why can't you focus? I mean, you're in such a wonderful environment. You this place where you have to sit still for 8 hours straight all day long, or the place where you're constantly getting bullied by other kids who have to sit for 8 hours a day listening to.
You're not allowed to talk to the other people you can actually relate to in the school, the other kids and stuff, and it's just
terrified teachers who are no longer allowed to practice one of the most ancient and respected crafts on earth, which is to educate kids. It's one of the most important, beautiful, incredible skills. These people are underpaid, and they're being forced to teach these kids to memorize, not teach these kids about the incredible universe
concepts
that we're existing in. They're given no freedom. They've got to they have lesson plans that they've got to do. The whole model is some kind of like Henry Ford, let's run this thing like a factory.
Yeah, it is. The schools are like factories now. I don't get it seems like to me you hire a teacher to teach. You know what I'm saying? It's like if they're not a good teacher, then you pull them out and get someone else. Like, why do you need to micromanage them and set up all these schedules? And like you said, it's like a factory. Where it's to the point where you don't even almost need good teachers anymore. Like, anybody can just go in there, you just follow a set of rules. It's ridiculous. Like, we need to have teachers who are actually allowed to teach because they want to. That's the thing.
And here's where it gets weird, man. This is where things start getting creepy.
Yeah.
Is where, okay, so here's the thing. Here's one of these things that accidentally benefits one of the largest drug cartels on earth, which is the pharmaceutical industry. So here you have a pressure cooker situation where a bunch of kids are being shoved together. They're being fed this essentially slop. If you decide to buy food from not all cafeterias, but I've seen these pictures. These kids are tweeting.
It's pretty bad.
They're being fed slop in their canned. They're shoved together like sardines, and some of these kids start having the natural reaction that any member of the most, theoretically, at least one of the most, unless you want to count dolphins or whales, I don't know. But for now, let's just say I'll be a human-centric asshole and say that we are theoretically the most advanced species living on this planet right now, unless we find out that there is some kind of hollow Earth.
Yeah, I was about to say, hey, now those guys in hollow Earth, they're going to come after you for saying that.
But for now, let's just say on the surface of the Earth, we are the most advanced species. So you have these kids filled with whatever the fresh testosterone pumping through their bodies. They have this their brain hasn't even finished forming yet. You've got this. All of us have this relative to other creatures on this planet. This giant neocortex processing so many bits of information per second. This thing needs to be outside. This thing needs to be running through nature. This thing needs to be using its body, not 1 hour a day in a gym class. Man, that's not our history. Our history was not one where early humans would, for 1 hour a day, go jogging on a flat, grassless, waxed surface. We spent all of our time running through nature, connected with nature, hunting. That's what life used to be like.
Learn by doing.
What's that?
Like learn by doing. That was always the thing when I was growing up. Is the people with ADD, they'd be like, oh, yeah, you just learn better by doing things, like by actually doing it hands-on, and this is like
Weird.
A different way. Yeah, it's like this is a different way of learning, and we need to be accepting of these people, and you get made to feel like you're just kind of weird and shit, and it's like,
You
wait,
get made to
what?
feel like you're retarded.
Yeah, it's like, wait, what? So like that's weird that you learn things by doing them, not being just, fed information about it and you're expected to take that information and then turn it into something. I mean,
God, it's so weird. But
yeah.
it's like we do to kids in school with information what they do to those foie gras geese that get their livers just filled with
Oh
berries, and
man.
they shove their throats open and shove this fucking thing down into, excuse me for cursing,
That's
shove this
okay.
thing down into their throat and just pump their livers, just fill them up, and
It's like
act like
veal. It's like,
they like it.
yeah.
But it's like, no, they don't like it. So now here's where it gets sinister. So you have certain, some demographic of these kids who start reacting to this like anybody would. They start freaking out in whatever way. They start misbehaving, doing weird stuff. And so the weird way that they're acting is considered unnatural instead of natural. Instead of like sitting down with a doctor or somebody and being like, yeah, you're having a natural reaction. You see, you're one of the most advanced species, or maybe the most advanced species on this planet. You have this massive brain, and you're a kid, so you just basically want to be outside. And that's how, for the majority of the evolution of your species, that's what everything did, except for this tiny little piece after the Industrial Revolution, where we were taught that sitting down and memorizing stuff is the same thing as experiencing life. So
Yeah.
you should be going crazy right now.
Yeah, and what's going to happen whenever we move past the Industrial Revolution to where we don't see? That's the thing. I think we're already starting to move to a point to where we don't need factory workers anymore, which might be why the government's maybe lightening up on some things. Is we don't need factory workers anymore because we have machines and robots and things to do that, or are going to be doing that. So we actually need more creative people and stuff like that. As time goes on, I think there's going to be a lot more jobs and opportunities for people who are just creative, and not as many for people who just want to, attach, that thing to the other thing and then to keep doing that all day. It's just.
Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully, I love to. I
wishful
optimist
thinking
when
maybe.
it comes to where things are headed, but I do think there needs to be a very sober assessment of what we're putting into the bloodstream of our kids, and and some great advice that I like to live by, though I don't all the time, but mostly I do.
Yeah.
Here's some great advice. Avoid white powders. It's a really good advice, man. It's like, because white powders, they will mess you up, whether it's sugar, cocaine, or Oxycontin. Whatever the stuff is, white powders tend to be really bad.
They don't really happen naturally very often.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So avoid white powders.
Yeah.
So let's try to like lower the amount of white powders that we're putting into the bloodstream of our kids. But when you realize that there is a massive cartel that exists, pharmaceutical companies that make so much money by getting these white powders into kids and into adults too, and anybody, and you realize then that the setup of schools in some way seems to benefit them by driving people nuts.
It does.
And then you realize, like, oh my God, there seems to be some kind of accidental yet very profitable connection here between these two things. And then when you add to that the prison industrial complex, which is that, so then if a person goes sufficiently crazy enough from being boxed in one of these like penal colonies for teenagers, and they start like moving, like rebelling in any way they can because they just don't know what else to do, then it benefits the prison industrial complex because the kids end up going to jail. Right. So you have this weird, terrible, what's the word for it? An awful symmetry that's happening here that needs to be acknowledged and understood. And we need to recognize that. In the same way, you don't want I remember when I was a kid, right? If I did something really bad, and my parents, by some miracle, started fighting after I'd done something bad, then my punishment would be massively diminished by the fact that my parents got in a fight.
Right.
So secretly, it would benefit me if I could figure out a way to get my parents to start fighting if I did something bad. right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, it's like these massive corporations, you don't want there to be benefit for you don't want kids losing their minds to equal profit for a corporation. You don't want that. You don't want there to be you don't want that. It's like in the same way that you don't want there to be profit when war breaks out. Because if there's profit when war breaks out, and you can, look at that incredibly beautiful speech that I believe it was Eisenhower gave, talking about the dangers of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, I've seen that. That is awesome. Yeah,
it's amazing, man.
Yeah,
and if you look at that, like at him pointing out, listen, man, we can't. He didn't say it like that, but he's like, we can't have these corporations getting rich from chaos breaking out in the world. So what you have set up accidentally, I think, or not accidentally, is a kind of parasitic manifestation.
It is, yeah.
What's that?
I was saying sometimes I think it's an accident. It is, and I think sometimes maybe it's not. But yeah, these companies end up being like these heartless machines.
I think the windshield guy's here. Hold on 2 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Whoops. Hold on. Coming. Sorry.
All right. Duncan had to fix his windshield.
Sorry, man. Friday the 13th, Pebble hit my windshield. Now I've got a guy doing something to fix it, but
yeah,
it's that's the most annoying chaos event, because you have no control over it. Just some random pebble since the beginning of time was destined to my windshield.
It's been flying through the universe for trillions and trillions of years. Some like alien probably kicked it off of a moon and set it onto your path.
It probably chipped the windshield of a spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. That's what redirected its course to L.A. to hit your windshield. But back talking about corporations, I want to talk about this, and I meant to do this on another show, but this is awesome that I got you on here. I'd tell you about this. I don't know if you really call it a theory or what it is, but this is just like a way that I like to explain why I think that corporations can, not that they always do, but can end up being these like heartless machines basically, and they just don't care what happens to people and only care about making money. All right, so I call this like my napkin theory, basically. Okay, so let's say you have like some little burger shop, and you're ordering all the supplies that you need for your business for that month or whatever, and you're ordering napkins for your shop. Well, you just got one store. It doesn't. Your business isn't going to be made or broken based on how many napkins. If you order like a 200 new napkins, it doesn't matter. Like it literally will affect your business zero. Right. So it doesn't really matter. It's just like, about 750, let's do it. You don't have to worry about it. But now if you have an insane number of chains like McDonald's, if you have like 30 of your burger places in like every state,
right,
and you're ordering napkins, well, that has to be really specific. And then some egghead comes in there and he goes, hey, if we ordered napkins that were made out of this material that weighs like ever so slightly less, we could save like $10 million a year.
Yes.
And so that stuff happens, and it happens over and over and over. They look at every little thing and they go, wow, we could make $10 million extra if we just use slightly less color in our, print out logos or whatever it is. And they just do that to death. And to the point where it becomes this just machine of just really subpar products, and which is I think is what happens, to places like McDonald's, and I think that's happened to Walmart and a lot of big businesses like that. And then they kind of lose sight of their direction, and they are just like a machine, even though there's people in it running it. It's basically now it's a machine, and it just does whatever it has to do to stay alive. And it's almost like this other. It's taking on a life of its own almost, as a separate organism almost.
That's great, man. I love that theory. You're damn right too. That's where disruptive technology comes in, because while these massive, insane corporations are doing that, you have all these little mini things springing up, like Uber, or you have all these, really like tiny little businesses springing up that are offering stuff at prices that aren't that bad at all,
right.
But it's a million times better than what you're getting from these other places.
Yeah.
And so, that creates this amazing market pressure that hopefully will start steering the ship out of the waters of profit over people, because you hear the kind of idyllic story of the old school mom and pop business where they didn't think, yeah, let's make as much money as we can. They really thought, like, let's create a hub in the community, and try to, give really cool stuff to people because it feels good. And we like money. It's not like we don't want to make money, but it's like we don't have to make so much money. I mean, look at like the stuff that if you look at the amazing. Now, there's an argument about this. People say that the reason antiques look so amazing that you see is not because everything back then was built in a beautiful way, but because the antiques that have lasted were well crafted and all the crappy stuff is, dissolved. But I think, craftsmanship, and that used to be a much bigger part of.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's like our culture and the way that we consume basically has just totally changed. It's gone from a culture where you buy things to last, like everybody has that like old grandpa that's always upset with the business or something like that. It gets easily upset, with his service, stuff like that. I think it's because it goes back to a time to where back in the 50s and 40s and, whatever, even the 60s, I think businesses, they cared more about the community. They cared more about the product that they were putting out there, and they had more expectations, or the people who were patronizing that business had more expectations of that, just because that was just how the environment was, because people wanted quality things. They wanted something that was going to last. But now people just want something that's going to just get them through the next day, or like, oh, I need this thing, let me just buy one that'll just work for this one time, and I think that there's there's kind of like a paradigm shift, I guess you could say, back to small businesses now.
That's right.
And especially, I don't know if you got to like check out much of Nashville when you were here, but Nashville is just a shining example of that. Like there's an area not that far from where I live that used to be like, I wouldn't say it's like the ghetto necessarily, but it used to be just, it was like a lot of payday loans. Like it was one of those kind of places, just a lot of cash advance, car dealership kind of area. And man, you go down through there now, it's like a totally different place. There's all these like trendy like burger places and like hot chicken places and antique shops and furniture places. And it's just like there's just a plethora of all these little businesses that have just popped up. Yes. And that's happening all over the place.
For sure, man. I get my hair cut at a barber. This is from this, like, he's become my friend.
Yeah.
Like we text each other now. He's like a cool guy. And like I like going there. We have conversations. He knows what's going on in my life. I know what's going on in his life. And it's cool, man. It's not just like I'm going there for whatever the thing is I'm paying for. It's like now it's become like it's cool, man. It's like if I have dry cleaning, I know the guy there now. I like him because I live in a part of LA where it's like that's the cool thing about LA is there are these little clusters of small towns.
Yeah.
And cool. Inside the big cities, these little towns, but I love that, man. I like that where I go to eat breakfast, I know the people there, and that's so important. And that's a thing that people don't realize is that in this insane, and it's because we're all in a hurry, right? It's like it's because everyone's rushing to get from this place to the next and that place to the next. And we're all in this kind of like survival mode where we're trying to fight to survive. And there really isn't time to think about, oh yeah, great conversation with your barber. I don't have time for that, man. I got to get to work. But that insane momentum or that insane that stressed out, I'm in a hurry feeling that everybody has, it's all part of this system that hopefully is shifting. It's all part of somewhere along the way, we all decided to start freaking out.
Yeah.
And we all started putting, or a lot of us started putting money as the most important thing. And it started from the top, man, and it's worked its way down to where we've all become bean counters,
Yeah.
Or not all of us,
but a lot more of them than there used to be. Yeah.
Man, forgive me for quoting Jesus Christ here, but one of my favorite parts of the New Testament is, and a lot of people argue about the interpretation of this, but they're always trying to trick him because he's this hippie wandering around in a place that's occupied by Roman soldiers, and he's like talking about how the most important thing is love, and that's all that really matters, and that we have to like help people, and he's like healing everybody. So he's just like messing. He's like Jesus was a disruptive technology. Like Jesus was. Forgive me for saying.
He was Uber. Is that what you're about to say?
I'm so sorry for saying that.
Okay. All right. Duncan Trussell has just said that Jesus is Uber. They are the same.
It's a disruptive technology. Yeah. Love is a disruptive technology. So you have this person going around freaking everybody out because he's healing everybody. He's doing it for free, but he's doing it on any day that he wants. And they're saying to him, "Oh, you can't do this on the Sabbath. It's the Lord's day." And he's saying, "Come on, that's a human imposition. Every day is this beautiful exhalation of life that comes from the divine. So I don't have to like follow the weird grid that you've placed over time if I'm doing sweet things for people." He didn't say that. And if he had, there probably wouldn't be Christianity. People are like, "Shut up, Jesus." But that's what I think he meant. So that one of the coolest parts of the New Testament, one part that I really like is when they came to him and they said what about paying taxes? And he said, "Show me your money," or whatever they had at the time. What was it, a denarii or something?
Yeah,
I don't know what the currency was. Do you know what that was?
I think it was denarii. I think.
He says, "Let me see that." And he said, "Whose picture is on that thing?" And they said, "Caesar." And he said, "Offer unto Caesar what is Caesar's." And his point was, "Oh, you mean your magical coins? Your valueless thing, the symbol that you've placed so much energy into, it's nothing. Yeah. It's nothing. Give it to him. Pile it high. Just pile as much of your stupid monkey metal all around your imaginary power person, because what we're doing here is hopefully, as much as we can, embodying a much greater transcendent idea or force or whatever you want to call it." And there's a lot of different names for it out there. Some of them are more controversial than others. Some of them are more convenient than others. Instead of saying some super intimate, transcendent, super imminent. I'm about to say enema when I'm talking about God. So I'm gonna instead of saying some transcendent, always present, hyper intelligent love force that compels people to evolve and connect, you could just say God.
Right.
But whatever you want, but if you say that to the wrong person, they're like, they get really mad. So whatever you want to say, the whole point is, it seems like a lot of people have forgotten that the greatest feeling that you will have in your life is that moment that you do something for somebody who doesn't deserve it, and you do it not because you want to get something from it, but just because you want to help. Right. That's an amazing feeling, man. There's nothing like that. You can't buy that feeling, market that feeling, sell that feeling. You can't get that feeling from any human. That's not hanging on a rack at Target. So, and we forget that. And so in our forgetting that, that's when suddenly we create this false idol called profit. And you start worshiping it, you start bean counting, and you start thinking that your job on this planet is whatever you do from day to day.
Yeah.
Instead of what's that?
I was saying, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like you forget that it was just something that we just made up on our own just for trade, and then it becomes part of like your goal in life.
That's it, man. That becomes your goal, and now you're an idolater in the most ridiculous way, because. And really what's terrible is that you have confused your job. Now you think, well, my job is my job is I'm a comedian, I'm a podcaster, I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor. That's my job. That like when you go to somebody and you're like, "What do you do? What do you do?" And you expect them to tell. They'll say like, "I'm a dentist."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, really, that's not what you do. That's something you do, but it's not. That shouldn't define you. Like, what's your real job? What's the real job on this planet? What's the real job? If there was a real job, who's your real boss, man? Is it some guy who like sits at a desk and cuts you a paycheck every week? Is that your boss on this earth? That's your king, your Caesar, your emperor. That's who you work for. Do you want to make that your real boss? No, that's just a game you're playing that has as part of the game a score system that involves rectangular bits of paper covered in strange Masonic symbology that is ultimately completely meaningless when it comes to the grander idea that what our job must be is to, as much as possible, optimize ourselves and help others around us optimize themselves so that we can reduce the suffering of our species. That's got to be the job, right?
Yeah.
That's the real job.
Yeah.
And once you forget that, then the next thing you know, you're buying 5-cent toilet paper and sending it to your McDonald's, and every time people eat your poisonous, awful, preservative-filled food and then go have explosive diarrhea in your bathroom, their fingers are poking through your super thin toilet paper, and you're getting diarrhea all over your stores. So that's what happens when you're an idolater. You get diarrhea all over McDonald's.
Yeah. That might be one of the best rants I've ever heard.
Thank you, friend.
I don't see how you do that, man. Like, that's pretty awesome how you can just like you can pick all that stuff apart, man, that articulately. But yeah,
well,
man,
it's fun talking with you, man. Sometimes you just get inspired, and then this, like, you know, the hippie shrill rage comes into your heart, and the next thing you know, you're talking about Jesus, and it's just it just happens.
It's awesome, man. You know what? The real secret of why I started this podcast was not to make money or to get viewers or fans. It was because I get to have a bunch of awesome conversations with friends. Like I've been able to like reconnect with old friends and stuff like that doing this podcast. You know, it's awesome. It's like every week, I just get to hang out and just have awesome conversations, like whether anybody listens or not. Like that kind of thing is not to be taken lightly. Like, that's just an awesome part of being alive, is getting to just, have free and open conversations with people. It's like, that
is it. That's, to me, that's the paycheck right there, man. And everything after that is just, it's great. But man, I 100% on the same page with you. It's just this new medium, it lets these conversations happen. I get to have chats with people that I normally wouldn't get to talk to, and ideas are exchanged. And the end result is you have a little bit of a happier life. It's really a cool thing. And
really
I
blows up your
recommend
perspective,
everyone start a podcast.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's an awesome thing. And it's funny, I never used to really listen to talk radio. And it makes sense, because a lot of the talk radio that was like on, actual regular radio that you listen to in your car is just boring, just slow and just monotonous, And I discovered a podcast, and I was like, oh, okay. So like, it's not the fact that it's just people talking that was boring. It's just that the stuff that those people were saying was boring. It's like when there's actually real people talking like normal, then it's interesting. One thing I don't get, why do journalists still talk like the way that they do? Like, what does that accomplish? Like, who cares about that? Like, why do you need to talk that way? Like, I mean, we're not children. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to talk to us that way. You can just talk to us like a real person.
You mean that weird cadence that they do?
Yeah.
They have this weird, like, well, first of all, I think it's really important that we and I've heard this word getting used more and more, infotainment. I think that's a really important word, in that calling the news or calling some of these people journalists.
Yeah.
It's not right. You need to start calling them infotainers. They're journalists out there for sure, hardcore journalists, but usually the stuff they have to say is not that scintillating. It's always kind of like middle of the road. Yeah, here's what's happening. It's not as bad as you thought. It's probably not as good as you thought. It's just, here's what's going on. It's kind of drab quite often. And then you have the infotainers who will take, someone like, somebody like any event, like instead of like, especially like when it comes to, and by the way, I hope I don't seem like I'm pandering here, man, but when it comes to like gun violence, they won't, when they give the whatever happened with gun violence, they won't point out the fact that relative to gun violence throughout the world, this is an incredibly diminished time period for that. They won't point that out. They won't say, this seems to be...
they don't offer any perspective whatsoever on this situation.
It's never an outlier. It's always some implication that in like a year or so, if we don't do something fast, we're going to be living in Mad Max with people
Yeah.
marauding through the streets, dragging babies out of baby carriages and
Fighting with
using their
gasoline.
butts as holsters for their unlicensed weapons. That's the message that you get. And then
Yeah.
you're like, my God, we got to stop this. We've got to stop it. No one's going to use my baby as a holster.
You got to work that into an act sometime. That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's coming from the gun perspective like I do, 'cause that's what I'm involved in. It's just, man, it's just frustrating when you see that they don't put any of that stuff in perspective when they tell some story about guns. Another thing that drives me crazy is because of the manipulation of like the human psyche. They make people think somehow that, unless you just know that somehow gun violence is worse than just regular violence. That's one thing that I've never understood. Like, why is it so much worse to get shot versus to get beat to death or stabbed or raped? Like, I don't understand. Like, why is gun violence even a term that's used in that sense? It doesn't even make
violence.
sense. Yeah, it's violence. Yeah, exactly. In countries where gun restrictions are a lot more strict and regulated, there's still violence. It's just maybe not with guns. Like, honestly, I'd rather get shot than stabbed, probably. I mean, I don't know.
I think there's something I know. No, you'll never hear a reporter say that.
Yeah,
You'll
no.
never hear a reporter after talking about some kind of awful, stupid thing that happened with a gun. You'll never hear the reporter saying, man, that guy's going to survive. But if the assailant had been using a samurai sword, he would be... he'd just be ribbons of red flesh and entrails. Have you ever read that great book? There's a really wonderful book called How I Learned to... I can't remember the exact name. How I Learned to Something and Love the Apocalypse. You know that book?
I've heard
It's kind
of
of like a
that. I haven't read it.
survivalist book, but it's like,
sounds
it's pretty
familiar.
cool. It's just like this guy uses all these different examples of like skills you might need if society's shut down.
Yeah.
And his advice, man, when he's like, if you are around somebody who wants to fight you and they have a knife, his advice is you run.
Yeah.
You run.
Yeah, I'm not
Just
getting in a knife fight.
Run.
I'm not Steven Seagal. I'm not doing that.
No, you just run. Because he was talking about how like knife fighters, he was describing, it's an art, and he's talking about the art of knife fighting and how part of what they know how to do is not because, maybe you don't want to kill somebody, but what you do want to do is slice the very topmost layer of their skin off of their forearm, and so when they look down, they see what used to be their forearm is now just like an open flap hanging in front of them, just like an open pink flap where they can see their tendons and blood. And then they're going to be like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to fight you today because I got to go to urgent care.
Yeah, really.
It's like that's like a really, anyway, I love what you're saying. It's violence. And I think that there's something comforting to think that we have these evil totems, which are guns.
Yeah.
And that these are the evil generators. Like, these are these dark little idols, like in that famous Brady Bunch where they find that Hawaiian idol that like makes tarantulas fall.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
It's like we love to believe that these things are like these emanators of sin or darkness, because it's way more comforting to think that than to think that, you know what? Sometimes people just go crazy.
Yeah.
And when they do it, they do awful things for no reason.
Yeah. And that's
Nobody wants to think that. You want to think like, oh, it's the guns that are evil. Oh, yeah, those guns. Once we get rid of the guns, man, the unicorns are going to come back.
Yep.
We're going to all be dancing in rainbows. How much more time do we have, man? I think I got to go here pretty soon.
Okay. Yeah. We'll go.
How much time did we do here?
Let's see. It's been like an hour. We can wrap it up, man.
I apologize. I don't mean to like hit the eject button, but my
no, it's all
dog's
good.
barking. A guy's working on my windshield, and I
it's
think
all good.
somebody else has come to my house now.
Oh, it's all good.
Hey, man, you got to come on my podcast.
Dude, I would love to do that, man.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do that. We'll work that time out, and then when you come on my podcast, let's talk about guns and
dude.
horrify some people, because I'm not supposed to like guns, I don't think. But we'll it'd be fun to get, like, you have a real cool perspective, man, and I think
Thanks,
that
man.
what you're doing is some real good work, and I think it's really cool what you're doing. It's really cool. So yeah, let's do a. Hopefully, you'll be a guest on my podcast. So.
Yeah, oh yeah, man, that'll be awesome. Just keep in touch. But yeah, man, yeah, I appreciate you being on. We gotta cut it short or whatever. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, forgive me for that. I'm sorry to cut it short. I have people coming over, so I gotta go deal with that.
It's all good, man. I understand. But I really appreciate you taking the time to be on. I know you got a busy schedule. You got a lot going. I just really appreciate it. And I hope some of you guys out there that are still listening to the show at this point, that were just totally freaked out by stuff that he said. Look, man, I mean, life is all about complexity to me. I mean, that's what makes it interesting. The complexity of life is what makes it so exciting and interesting. And he's a guy that has different views about things. Maybe we all have different ideas about things. I think it's a great exercise to hear what other people have to say about things, whether you agree with them or not. And just
why can't we be friends?
Yeah, we're all people. That's the thing. We're all people. We have a different idea about how things work or happen or how they should be. But hey, that's what life is all about. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and hell yeah, man, if you're up for it, we'll do it again sometime.
Love it. Beautiful, man. Very nice chatting with you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
Later. Bye.